I have no intention of dealing with your parents. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce."
That's how my husband threatened me. Are you sure about that? I had reached my limit and decided to go through with the divorce he suggested. A few days later, my ex-husband came to me, crying and begging on his knees.
I was wrong. Please, forgive me.
My name is Sally, a 27-year-old office worker. I had been married to David for a year. We met back in college. I was a freshman then, excited about the new campus life. At a club recruitment event, David approached me. He was 2 years older than me and was in the tennis club. I wasn't very athletic, but he explained that he joined as a beginner and was having fun. And the club had a system where everyone practiced and played matches at their own level. My friend was also interested, so we both decided to join the tennis club. I was nervous until the actual practice started, but he remembered me and taught me kindly. The experienced players would practice with each other, and the club had a great atmosphere where no one was left out. The seniors were always eager to teach the beginners, and everyone was so nice, which made the drinking parties fun too. During my enjoyable college life, he confessed to me around the time he graduated.
I've always liked you. I'm going to be working soon, and we won't be able to see each other. I wanted to tell you my feelings before it's too late. Will you go out with me?
I had actually liked him too, but thought he saw me just as a junior and had given up on the idea. So, when he confessed, I was thrilled. Of course, I said yes, and we started dating. Since I was still a student and he was working, we mostly met on weekends. But we had a great time. He was mature, leading the way and taking me to various date spots. He often paid for our dates, saying I was still a student, which I thought was very manly. When I was job hunting, he gave me advice, which really helped me prepare. Later, I graduated and got a job.
Congratulations, Sally.
Thank you. It's all thanks to you, David.
No, it's because you worked hard.
Then he suggested,
Now that we're both working, how about we live together?
You mean move in together?
Yeah. I thought it was better for you to focus on studies while in school.
That might be a good idea. I was happy he suggested moving in together. We decided to inform our parents about it. Thank you for thinking to meet my parents.
It's fine. It would be shocking if your parents just popped in and found out we were living together. Plus, it doesn't leave a good impression if I don't meet them first.
Oh, David. I was glad he was so responsible, valuing our relationship and considering others. We went to my parents' house, and we told them about our intention to live together. However, my parents were against the idea. Why? What's the reason? I didn't understand at the time. For them, it was too soon.
You haven't even lived alone yet, and you're about to start working, which means you don't know the hardships of being an employee. Starting to live together without fully establishing independence isn't good. First, get used to the job. Then, experience living alone. Only after you can live by yourself should you consider living with a partner. That's the right order, in my opinion.
But both of us were shocked at their opposition. We were even looking at apartments together.
Can't you really make an exception? I'm sorry. It's not that we don't trust you. It's just our opinion as parents, a rule and mindset of our household. I don't plan to bend it. So, if you want to live together, please, wait a bit longer.
Mom and Dad, you're being too rigid. There are so many couples younger than me who are living together.
And what if you end up getting pregnant? It's dangerous to act without considering the risks, getting carried away by the fun parts. We want you to have a solid foundation to handle any situation. You might be angry with us now, but please, understand.
He wouldn't budge. So David and I had no choice but to give up on moving in together. I had to apologize and send him home. I apologized again via text, and he seemed pretty shocked. I was very upset with my parents. Why did they oppose it so much? I'm 22 years old. I can be independent. But my parents wouldn't listen to my words. They dismissed me like a child, throwing a tantrum. There's a big difference between saying you can be independent and actually being independent. Once you start working, you'll see things differently. You're still young. Don't rush. Take it step by step. I felt so rebellious against my parents, who wouldn't understand my feelings. But as soon as I started working, I began to see that my parents were right. I realized how tough it was to live as an adult. Just going to work every day and slowly learning a massive amount of work was mentally exhausting. I felt even living alone would be challenging in such a state. There's no way I could have managed cooking dinner or cleaning. If David and I had moved in together, we probably would have fought endlessly. That's when I understood what my parents meant. It was ridiculous for me, who wasn't even prepared to be independent, to suddenly think about moving in together. Being at home, supported by my parents while focusing on work, was what I needed most at the moment. I dedicated myself to my job, wanting to gain the confidence to live on my own and prove it to my parents. Slowly, I became accustomed to work and started to see what it meant to live as a working adult, a corporate employee. After working for over half a year and saving up enough money, I was ready for living alone. On weekends, I learned cooking from my mom and made lunchboxes on days I could. Seeing this, my parents must have felt I was ready. They finally agreed to me living alone. So I started living alone in an apartment near my company. I managed to cook every day, and even with some overtime, I could still focus on my work. Before I knew it, I was the top performer among my peers and got an early raise. This boosted my confidence. Unlike my student days, I naturally developed a more mature way of thinking, and I could feel the change of myself, even when I was with David. We continued dating smoothly, visiting each other's places while living separately. He would often ask,
"Isn't it about time we started living together?"
But I felt it wasn't time yet. I think I need to experience living alone a bit more. I want to make sure I can manage life on my own, even when work gets busier.
"I see,"
he replied, somewhat reluctantly, but eventually agreed. After living alone for 2 years, managing my work and household chores even during busy periods, and saving money responsibly, I felt confident that I could handle whatever came my way. So I told David that I was ready to move in together. He was happy and immediately suggested moving in. We visited my parents again to inform them, and this time they recognized my independence and appreciated that David had patiently waited. They easily gave their blessings for us to live together. Next, we talked with David's parents, who were kind and said,
"If that's what you both want, we have no objections."
With their approval, we finally got the green light to live together. We excitedly searched for an apartment and signed a lease for a place that fit all our criteria. Choosing the kitchenware, furniture, and appliances together was a lot of fun. My income had increased significantly, and I had much more peace of mind than when I first started working. I'm glad we decided to move in together at this time. And so we started living together, finally realizing our long-awaited dream. No more saying goodbye after dates. Without feeling that slight sadness anymore, living together was so enjoyable. We spent time waiting for each other at home, going out to cafes or driving on weekends. We spent such happy times together. But even then, I noticed some small things. Living together brought up small differences in values and perceptions, things he or I might want the other to stop or that bothered us a bit. When these moments came up, I always tried to point them out carefully and gently. If we had moved in together before becoming working adults, I probably wouldn't have been able to handle these situations as well, and the worst case scenario might have been a breakup. I truly felt it was the right time to start living together. About a year after we started cohabiting, he proposed to me.
"We've been together for about 7 years, and I want to be with you forever. That will never change. Will you marry me?"
I felt the same and immediately accepted. Yes, I will. That's how we decided to get married. Since we had already introduced each other to our parents during our cohabitation, both sets of parents readily accepted our decision to remarry. We smoothly arranged a meeting between our families and had our wedding. Everything from our engagement to the wedding seemed to happen in the blink of an eye. Many people attended and celebrated our union, making me incredibly happy. After the honeymoon, we returned to our apartment to start our married life. I thought we would continue our peaceful and happy days, but after getting married, something about my husband started to bother me. It was around Christmas when I first noticed it. My dad suggested that we come over for a Christmas dinner. What do you think? I asked him, but he visibly grimaced.
"Why do I have to go to your family's place? I want to go to my own home for Christmas."
"But you haven't been to my family's home since we got married. I went to my parents alone for Thanksgiving. After getting married, it's important to visit each other's families." When I rebuked him, he replied reluctantly.
"Honestly, I'm not fond of your parents."
Why?
"They're just too rigid. Remember when we first talked about moving in together? They were all uptight."
Uptight? My dad was just giving us good advice.
"They're old-fashioned and inflexible. That's why I'd rather not be involved with them."
What? I was shocked by his words. I had rebelled against my parents back then, but now I was grateful for their strictness. Maybe he found my parents difficult because his own were more permissive. I think it was a matter of compatibility. But there was no need for him to slander them like that. From then on, I started to distrust my husband. I had always thought he was kind and sincere, but maybe he had another side to him. I began to sense a certain duplicity in him. After that, he never came to my parents' house and didn't make any effort to meet them. He would get really upset if my parents wanted to visit and would go to his own family's home instead. I was shocked by his attitude and felt guilty that I couldn't tell my parents the truth about his feelings. Gradually, my affection for him faded. He would force me to attend his family gatherings but refused to meet mine. His selfish behavior, based solely on his likes and dislikes, disappointed me. Recently, he started to openly denigrate my parents triggered by my earlier promotion than him.
Why the hell did someone born to parents like that become a manager before me? Is the company messed up? Or did your parents pull some strings? Like, please promote our child or something?
Of course they didn't do that. Why would you say something so awful? He was clearly berating me and my parents out of jealousy. I was so fed up with him. He seemed to be showing his true colors more and more. In the midst of this, my parents invited us to a family gathering, mentioning that my uncle, who had always been kind to me since I was little, would be there. He was a busy businessman and rarely attended these gatherings, so I rarely saw him. I wanted to go, especially because my uncle would be there. My parents had asked me to bring my husband to greet my uncle, so I tried talking to him about it. Hey, there's a family gathering at my parents' house in a couple of weeks. My uncle wants to meet you too.
Nope, pass.
What?
I told you I don't want anything to do with your parents. If you don't like it, let's divorce.
He threatened. I can't believe this. Why would you say that?
Because you don't listen.
Enough! I ended the conversation quickly and decided to go to the family gathering alone. I was happy to see my uncle after so long, but I had been not talking to David since our last fight, and the stress made it hard for me to smile. My uncle noticed and asked if something was wrong, and I ended up crying. This surprised not only him but also the other relatives.
What's wrong, Sally? Are you okay?
My parents also sensed something was amiss and rushed over. I apologized and honestly shared about my troubled relationship with my husband and how he had been insulting me and my parents. The relatives were furious, and my uncle was angry too. Then, to my surprise, he suggested we go and talk to David right then. But
it's okay. I just want to have a proper talk.
He assured me, so I took him back to our house. David was lounging on the sofa.
Oh, you're back already? And who's this?
He asked, casually, scratching his belly.
You must be Sally's husband. I'm her uncle. Uncle? So you're her parents' sibling, huh?
My husband responded disdainfully.
Is that any way to speak?
My uncle said in a low voice, clearly annoyed by my husband's attitude. My husband didn't back down, though he seemed a bit taken aback.
Why should I care? She's my wife after all. What are you doing here anyway? Isn't it rude to just show up unannounced? So you were just relaxing at home while there was a family gathering at your wife's parents' house. That's a terrible thing for a husband to do. What's with you? You're just like her dad, always preaching. Weird old man.
He then sneered. I was furious at his mockery. Stop it! Don't insult my family like that.
Oh? It's their fault for being ridiculous. Remember what I said? If you don't follow my rules, we'll divorce. Since you clearly don't get it, here's something for you.
He handed me filled out divorce papers. Are you really okay with this? I was at my breaking point. I decided to go through with the divorce. You better not regret this.
Who would regret it? You have a lot to reconsider about yourself, my uncle said, visibly exasperated and no longer angry. I packed my things with my uncle and took them back to my parents' house. Then I submitted the divorce papers and finalized my divorce from David. He was truly the worst. Why hadn't I seen how petty he was? I apologized to my parents and uncle numerous times. Although they comforted me, saying it wasn't my fault. I felt responsible for marrying such a man. But it wasn't over yet. I knew a fact about him, which is why I decided to take action against him. A few days later, my ex-husband came to my parents' house crying and begging for forgiveness. I was wrong. Please, forgive me.
He said this because of what my uncle had done. The company my uncle managed was actually a major client of David's company. I only found this out when I told my uncle about my ex. My uncle had decided to assess David in person before making a decision about the contract. Finding him utterly despicable, he quickly decided to terminate the contract. Naturally, this caused significant problems from my husband's company. The president immediately asked my uncle why, and he honestly spoke about David's character, saying he didn't want to continue a contract with a company employing someone with such poor character. Consequently, the president fired David. In a panic, he came to me begging for forgiveness.
I was wrong. I should have valued not only you but your family too. Please, let's get back together.
What? Are you serious? You're just trying to save yourself. It's so obvious. I don't have a shred of love left for you. We're already divorced and we're strangers now. Leave before I call the police, I said coldly and closed the door in his pale face. I thought if he was still there in 5 minutes I'd call the police, but he soon trudged away. After that, my ex-husband couldn't return to his company and struggled to find a new job. Apparently, he had been deemed incompetent at his previous company, and his reputation for causing problems made it impossible for him to find work. Now he's living in a miserable and lonely life in a cheap apartment, working part-time. All my college friends supported me, so he was ostracized by them too. Even his parents were dismayed and cut ties with him. Well, he's still young and can start over, but I hope this experience has made him realize how awful his behavior and attitude were. Meanwhile, I'm doing well in my job, finding work more and more enjoyable. My uncle, parents, and I had dinner together, enjoying our time as a happy family. Going forward, I plan to cherish my family while enriching my work and personal life.